All right. Sorry. Today we're going to be looking at responsible use of artificial intelligence in speech-language pathology and audiology professional practice guideline. This guideline was approved by Council on the 29th of November 2025 and went into effect on the 15th of December 2025. It is available on the ACSLPA website under Key College Documents under the Guideline section. Today's presentation aims to highlight some of the key aspects of the guideline, but I encourage you to please refer back to the guideline for more detailed information. The term regulated member that is used throughout the guideline and the term registrant may be used interchangeably throughout the webinar. For today's agenda, we're going to be looking at what is artificial intelligence, the possible uses in speech-language pathology and audiology, what are the potential benefits and risks, some practice guidance considerations, and then the key takeaways from today. At the end, there will be some time for general questions related to the guideline itself. You can put those in the chat and we'll address them at the end. As a presenter, we're not always able to see the chat, so Paula will monitor it on our behalf and we will answer the questions at the end. If you have specific questions on specific technology or specific questions relating to your practice, we encourage you to send the questions directly to us via the Contact Us forum on the website. And then also we have put a page number in that scroll icon, as you can see in the page 1 example on the slide, for further information where further information can be obtained in the guideline itself. Okay, so let's jump right in. So what is artificial intelligence or AI? There's no single definition of AI. AI is considered to be the capability of a computer or artificial system to do things that are normally associated with human cognition, such as perceiving, reasoning, learning, problem solving, and self-improvement. Generative AI uses advanced systems that can produce or generate new content, such as text, audio, and videos in response to user prompts. While non-generative forms of AI, such as transcription tools, have a broader application of particular interest, and the main focus of this guideline is the use of generative AI in healthcare. There are many potential uses for AI in the world of speech-language pathology and audiology. Some of the areas of use may include the area of administration, where there are tools which can automate clinical documenting, manage client billing, scheduling, translation, interpretation, and so forth. In the area of diagnostics, there are image, speech, and other data analyzing tools which can provide interpretation of clinical data. In the area of intervention, there are tools which can assist in session planning or preparation of therapy materials, or create simulated human-like therapy assistance for virtual care clients. And then in the area of research, there are tools that can review and summarize literature or clinical research data sets. So let's have a look at the potential benefits of AI. This is not an exhaustive list and is to name a few potential benefits. There may be improved efficiency through supporting administrative and clinical care, possibility of reduced healthcare costs due to improved efficiency, decreased practitioner workloads resulting from automation and optimization of administration and tasks, improved practitioner wellness, which can result from reduced administrative workloads, and providing additional support for clinical learning, but always when used in conjunction with professional education and peer support. Now that we've had a look at the potential benefits, let's look at the potential negative impacts and potential unintended consequences of using AI. Generally, as an AI system or tool more closely models the practice of speech-language pathologists or audiologists, the risks associated with its implementation will increase. which will then increase the level of accountability and risk management required. This is not a complete list, and for more potential risks and consequences, I encourage you to review the guideline. The first possible risk is in the area of governance and evidence base. There is currently no federal or provincial legislation to guide the use of AI in healthcare, and there is limited evidence related to use of AI in speech-language pathologists and audiologists to guide practice. Therefore, AI in professional practice is taking place in a context where there is, at this time, little governance and peer-reviewed evidence to support its use. An example of this would be the use of an AI-generated diagnostic tool, which has not been properly researched yet. We can go to the next slide.
Yeah, sorry, it didn't want to move. There we go.
Thank you. The next area of risk is privacy and security. Many AI systems collect, process, and retain client personal and health information. Client information stored in AI systems may be vulnerable to cybersecurity threats and other breaches. Even without identifying information, a client's privacy may be exposed by the clinical uniqueness of their case. An example of a breach of confidentiality comes from a real-life law case study. In September 2024, a group of physicians scheduled a virtual rounds meeting. The meeting was attended by hospital physicians, but one of the physicians on the meeting invite no longer worked at the hospital. This physician also held an account for an artificial intelligence-powered transcription tool, Otter AI. This tool uses artificial intelligence to access meeting invitations stored in digital calendars, attend the meeting, transcribe spoken words into text, generate detailed meeting notes and summaries, and then email those notes to meeting attendees. This tool was not approved for use at the hospital, and although the physician in question had not worked for the hospital for over a year at the time of the meeting, the physician retained access to the meeting invite in his personal, non-work-related digital calendar after leaving the hospital. The transcription tool was able to access the rounds meeting invite via the physician's personal digital calendar. The tool was able to join the rounds meeting, listen in, generate detailed meeting notes, and then automatically disseminate those notes, which contained personal health information of 7 patients, including patient names, gender, physicians' names, diagnoses, medical notes, and treatment information. This resulted in a significant breach of patient confidentiality that impacted these 7 patients. The next area of potential risk is in the area of bias. AI systems are vulnerable to bias when the data sets that the system are built and trained on contains biased information or information that is non-representative of the client. For example, speech recognition AI tools have been shown to have lower accuracy for dialect speakers, while facial recognition technology has persisting issues recognizing Black, brown, and Asian skin types and facial features. The potential for bias is increased when users are unaware of the potential for bias when using AI technology. I'll now turn it over to Susan to continue with a few additional risks that need to be considered when using AI.
All right, thank you, Margot. Hi, everyone. So another potential risk when using AI is in relation to client trust and transparency. Clients will have varying degrees of understanding, trust in, and desire for the use of AI in their care. For example, clients may have concerns about the reliability of information that's generated by AI, or that AI may not adequately consider their individual circumstances or needs. Clients may also vary in their assessment of specific AI tools and have different expectations for different tools. Another example, a client may agree with the use of AI billing tools, but they may not approve of the use of AI technology in assisting in making a diagnosis or in treatment planning. The perception that AI is substituting for the healthcare provider, that is the speech pathologist or the audiologist, does have the potential to disrupt the client-provider relationship. And so for this reason, informed consent is particularly important whenever AI is used in healthcare or is being considered. And we'll discuss that in more depth as we proceed through the presentation. Another potential area of risk relates to accuracy and accountability. So data sources, training, and processes by which information is analyzed and outputs are generated can be unclear to users of AI systems or tools. And of course, the recent proliferation of these systems and tools can make it really difficult to know which applications can actually be relied on. The accuracy of some AI systems in generating outputs is dependent on the nature and quality of the inputs and also the prompts that are provided by the human user. So a poor quality prompt might yield inappropriate or incorrect information for the specific situation, which can then have a negative impact on the client. And an example of this would be in the field of dietetics, where there's a lot of credible, scientifically generated, rigorous information to guide evidence-based decision making. But then there's also a lot of sort of quote wellness information that claims to be scientific but isn't. So AI systems can have difficulty separating science from fallacy. And if the data on which AI is being trained is problematic, then you kind of get that garbage in, garbage out effect. Many of you have probably heard of AI hallucinations. I personally love that term. I think it's a great descriptive term. But these are responses that contain false or misleading information presented by AI as fact. And there can be situations where that happens, and our clients can be left very confused or not understanding information that they may have received. And so there may be times where it's important that we as clinicians need to help them navigate content to sort of figure out, well, where did that what is the content and is that valid or not as it relates to SLP and audiology practice, for example. Over-reliance on AI as a tool may result also in insufficient oversight by providers with respect to decision-making and clinical judgment. And as a result, some aspects of client care may unintentionally and inappropriately become transferred to AI. This obviously is an issue that needs our ongoing attention, and it's also part of the reason why clients might be concerned with AI use. So having reviewed some of the risks related to AI use, I'd just like to briefly turn to ACSLPA's role in relation to AI. Professional regulatory bodies are required by law to protect and promote the public interest or public safety by regulating the practice of a profession. And our key college documents, such as standards of practice and codes of ethics, provide the minimum expectations of our regulated members or our registrants to ensure public safety. Whereas guidelines go into a little more detail in relation to the specific topic areas, and they're meant to support registrants in meeting the more general standards of practice and code of ethics. Data obtained from our 2024 registrant survey indicated that folks were definitely seeking practice guidance in relation to the use of AI. And so this did become a priority in terms of document development. And that's why we have the guideline that we are reviewing with you today. It's important to note that ACSLPA does not regulate the use of tools, of devices, or technologies in the practice of speech pathology and audiology, nor does the college regulate the vendors of tools and technologies. That is not our role. Our role is to regulate members who may use AI in their practice. And it's also important to remember that there is no requirement from ACSLPA to use AI in one's practice. So kind of given the very fluid nature of this area right now and all the change and evolution that is happening, um, our one of our roles, I guess, is to closely monitor developments in this area and to which includes the development of federal and provincial legislation and evidence-based practice guidance, and to communicate those updates to you as appropriate. So this guideline will certainly be updated as more information becomes available. And as I said, I think we can all appreciate it is a quickly evolving area with several key players, including AI vendors, governments, and regulators. So we'll definitely need to keep an eye on what's coming in the future. Now going to turn to talking a little bit about practice guidance considerations, and I will share a few of those and then turn it over to Margot to continue. So just to start, I've already said that ACSLPA regulated members are expected to practice in compliance with our standards of practice and code of ethics. And in order to do that, there are 4 general principles that may be of assistance. First, you need a strong rationale for selection and implementation of AI. You need to decide whether the technology's intended purpose is appropriate for use in your setting and your particular scope of practice. Second, there's considerations related to protecting client interests. If you are thinking of using AI in your practice, you need to reflect on whether it be in your client's best interest to do so. And this relates to ethics, really, and our considerations related to beneficence. We want to do what's right for the client versus maleficence or any risk of harm to the client. We want to avoid that. A third important principle is accountability, and consistent with our standards of practice and code of ethics, clients are to be provided with safe, competent, and ethical care. So AI technology is intended to assist and complement care. It's not a replacement for clinical and professional judgment. So practically speaking, that means you need to be able to independently explain care plans to clients and others without the use of AI. And you need to regularly monitor and evaluate systems and tools to ensure they are meeting their intended purposes. I think the key takeaway here is that registrants are accountable for ensuring service provision meets minimum standards of care, and that AI-generated information should be reviewed for accuracy, relevance, and appropriateness. And then finally, the fourth general principle relates to technical support. You should ensure that adequate technical support is in place should technical issues arise when using AI. Identifying, reporting, and addressing concerns about AI technologies with vendors or operating organizations. I mentioned informed consent briefly earlier. Just the important, again, to stress that AI use should not infringe on the client's ability to make informed decisions about their care. So a takeaway from this is that we can't assume everyone will be on board with the use of AI. So just to keep in mind then that informed consent must be obtained prior to the use of AI. You need to share information regarding what tool is being used and how. Talk about risks and benefits. Talk about the right to refuse, withdraw, or modify consent at any time. And then have suitable alternatives in mind should the client refuse or withdraw consent for the use of AI in their care. In relation to privacy and confidentiality, any AI systems or tools utilized should allow for client privacy and confidentiality to be maintained at all times. I would suggest reviewing vendors' privacy policies and terms. Ask the question, does this AI technology adequately safeguard client privacy and confidentiality in compliance with the relevant legislation and minimum standards? You may need to review privacy legislation specific to your particular work setting to ensure that any AI systems and tools used are in compliance. Some legislation may require a privacy impact assessment for the use of AI. So these are just all important things to be aware of, and you need to investigate a little bit more specifically for your particular situation. In terms of continuing competence, regulated members should not integrate AI systems and tools unless you've developed the necessary competencies for using the technology in a way that does ensure safe and competent care. Of course, that requires staying up to date on advancements of AI systems and tools used. So with that, I'm now going to turn it over to Margot for a few additional considerations.
Another area of practice consideration is the area of documentation and information management. Regulators members should review and verify AI-generated documentation for accuracy, appropriateness, and compliance with ACSLPA's documentation standard before finalization and inclusion in the patient records. ACSLPA recommends providing notations of whether assistive technology was used to generate the documentation, which technology was used and in what context, and who the documentation was reviewed by prior to inclusion in the client's file. You should include only information on the clinical encounter and information for you should only include information on the clinical encounter and information for subsequent care and treatment. Extraneous information or information about third parties not involved in the encounter should not be included in the client records. For example, if the client shares information about an upcoming family holiday or a family member's illness, this information would not be considered relevant to the clinical encounter and should not be included in the visit record. The next consideration is culturally and linguistically appropriate care. Depending on the diversity of the dataset used to generate the output, some AI tools may be inappropriate for use for certain clients. For example, similar to the use of standardized assessment tools, if the AI tool is trained on data from a homogeneous sample of individuals that is not inclusive of the client, the supporting diagnostic information that is outputted may not be appropriate for the client. Important factors from the client's background will not have been incorporated into the tool's data processing and analysis, and it may not be reflected or incorporated into any outputs provided. Regulated members should be prepared to identify these types of contraindications related to bias and the provision of culturally and linguistically responsive care. Regulated members are expected to apply strong clinical reasoning and oversight to the interpretation of AI-generated information to ensure the obligation to provide culturally and linguistically appropriate care is met. Another area of consideration is evidence-informed practice. AI systems and tools have the potential to improve efficiency and literature searches and research synthesis. However, AI should be considered a supportive tool for evidence-informed practice and must not replace a professional's critical appraisal. Regulated members should remain mindful that AI research tools may be particularly susceptible to publication bias, whereby the data set drawn on may be limited to only studies published based on the direction or strength of the findings within. It is essential to verify references and accuracy of information. In law, there have been well-documented instances of AI hallucination cases or misinterpreting cases. Similar issues can be expected in AI-produced documents in the profession of speech-language pathology and audiology. Something also to be considered is the use of AI by supervisees. A regulated member of ACSLPA is responsible and accountable for the services delivered by personnel under their direction and supervision, which includes the use of AI by support personnel and students. As such, regulated members are required to maintain an awareness of the use of generative AI systems and tools by personnel under their supervision and to apply the same standards of care as they would if they were using AI themselves. When implementing AI into professional practice, it is considered the responsibility of the regulated member to work with their employers to ensure that employers are aware of the college's minimum standards and requirements with respect to AI use in the provision of care, and that employers implement AI in workplaces in manners that keep regulated members in compliance with their minimum standards. Vendors' responsibilities, transparency, and legislative and regulatory compliance should be verified with vendors prior to implementing an AI system or tool in the workplace. To ensure that minimum standards are met when using AI in service provision, employers, clinic owners, and speech-language pathologists and audiologists may wish to develop a robust set of policies and procedures to govern the use of AI within their practice. I will now turn it back to Susan for the last section.
Okay, thank you. This is just a shot, I guess, a snapshot of an implementation questionnaire that ACSLPA has provided at the end of the guideline for when you may be considering the use of AI in your practice. It includes a non-exhaustive list of just some general considerations to keep in mind. There may be other other important considerations specific to your practice setting and scope that will also need to be considered prior to implementing AI in professional practice, but I think this is a good starting point to take a look at. So in summary, just want to go over some of the key takeaways from today's presentation. Essentially, AI has definite potential benefits. However, make sure you are aware of the risks. Critically assess the AI tools you're looking to use. Ensure your AI tool complies with privacy legislation and maintains client confidentiality. Ensure you obtain informed consent before using AI and document the AI's use. AI should support and not replace professional expertise and critical judgment. And remember that when using AI, you are accountable to ensure minimum standards are met. So with that, I think we will open it up. As we said, if you have some general kind of questions or comments, certainly happy to address those right now. Anything that's a little more specific or kind of multi-layered and complicated, we would really appreciate your just using the contact us option on the ACSLPA website, because it may take us a bit of time to consider your question and come back with appropriate kind of feedback and guidance. Perhaps we can leave it there. Rhonda has just commented as a great start to a further conversation, perhaps more so for SLPs in private practice. I think certainly we hope that people will review the guideline, will consider it, will have conversations, and as we said, you can certainly contact us through the link. Thanks very much for your time today.